Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
This episode of the Sports Spectrum podcast, part 2 of our conversation with former pro soccer goalkeeper Caroline Stanley, is brought to you by Compassion International, your chance to make a difference in a child's life. Food, education, medical care, vocational training, all done in the name of Jesus. That's what every child deserves, and that's what you can do by releasing them from poverty and sponsoring them with Compassion International. It's $38, the best $38 you'll spend every single month. The website is compassion.com/sportspectrum. Compassion.com/sportspectrum. $38 a month. Make a difference in a child's life by sponsoring them today. Today's guest on the podcast, part 2 of our conversation with Caroline Stanley, the former pro soccer goalkeeper, now University of Tulsa goalkeeper coach. Caroline played in the National Women's Soccer League for 3 seasons, in 2015 with the Seattle Reign, 2016 with the Sky Blue FC, and then in 2017 with the Orlando Pride. Yesterday in part 1, you heard why Caroline retired at the age of 24 in January of 2018, and we talked to her about her life growing up as a PK, as a pastor's kid, and just what that life was like, finding her own faith, then going to college and really connecting with the Lord in a powerful way during her time at USC. Today, in part 2 of our conversation with Caroline, we talk about pro soccer, what it's like to play professional soccer, and coming to that world of the National Women's Soccer League. And it's not exactly the most glamorous job that you would think of. Although it is professional soccer, it's not like the NBA or the NFL or anything like that, or even the WNBA. It is a difficult road, and Caroline was part of the group that is pioneering professional soccer from the ladies' side. So we hear about that story. We also talked to her about John Means. Now, who is John Means, you might ask? Well, he's a pitcher with the Baltimore Orioles who made his Major League Baseball debut in September at Fenway Park. John also happens to be dating Caroline Stanley. So we talk about John and the relationship and just some really cool moments that Caroline's got to experience with John as he's gone through the minor league system and making that Major League debut. What a cool moment back in September of 2018. So without further ado, let's get to part 2 of our conversation with Caroline Stanley. I really enjoyed getting to know her. I think you guys will love hearing her story, especially here in part 2 of the Sports Spectrum podcast. Take a listen. Caroline Stanley joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. People see, because you end up getting drafted and you're in the National Women's Soccer League and you go to Seattle and you play with I don't even know where they're located, the Sky Blue FC. Where is that located?
That is in New Jersey.
New Jersey. Okay. So that's not far from where I am in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And then you get to the Orlando Pride, and that's your last team in 17. But I wonder, because, people on the outside might hear, ooh, pro soccer player. How cool is that? But it's not like this glamorous life, is it? Where you might see compared to the NBA or the NFL. In fact, I think from reading your retirement kind of post on social media that it's not even a full-time paying position in some capacity. Can you just tell us about the National Women's Soccer League, your experience there, and maybe the fact that it's as great as it is, it's not this glamorous NBA or NFL lifestyle?
Yeah. So, and I also didn't have a clue because no one tells you in college. I had this career at USC, and my senior year was the best with the new coaching staff that we had. And I honestly was not thinking I was going to get the opportunity to play pro. So I was interviewing for jobs at Fox and thought I would go down kind of that sports broadcasting route with all my heart. I had, become really close with Shelley Smith through college, and she had let me shadow her a little bit. And I was like, okay, you're going to dive full force into this life. And everybody kept telling me, God, you'd be so good on camera. You'd be so great on radio. You grew up in this football kind of family. And so I'm like, yeah, okay, everyone's telling me and affirming me to do so, and I'm going to do this. And was sitting at my interview with Fox and kind of was being tugged because they said, we love you and we want to give you this job. We've got to interview a couple more people, but I mean, if you're in, and I'm like, there's an opportunity for me to play pro. I don't know what's going to happen yet. And what was so crazy is they said, well, you got to go do that. And I'm sitting there going, wait, what? And so I went out to Seattle, and I left school early. So I was still on my scholarship monthly stipend. And that scholarship monthly stipend was twice as much as rookie league minimum. And so I was like, crap, I don't want to leave school.
Yeah.
I'm making more money being a student athlete than a pro athlete. And I'm also living in strangers' basement. And they ended up being an amazing family, and I miss them dearly. But I'm living in someone's basement playing pro soccer in Seattle, and rookie league minimum was $6,000 for the whole season.
For the whole season? I was hoping you might say for a month, but wow, for the whole season.
No,
wow.
The whole season. And luckily, the captain had a side business. Keelan Winters was one of the best captains I ever played for. So she helped me get training on the side. So I was making money training people. But then the next year when I went out to New Jersey, they bumped league minimum to $15,000 a season, which if you do the math, you're there March 1 usually, or the second week of March until the first week of October.
Oof.
And so $15,000 doesn't stretch very far.
No.
And don't get me wrong, some people, that's life-changing money just to even make around $1,000 a month. I understand that. But when you're at the pinnacle of your sport and you've got to buy your own cleats, and you're like, well, I made $998 after taxes this month, or $1,200 after taxes this month, whatever your salary ends up being. And as a second year, I only made a little bit above minimum because I didn't have very many starts under my belt. And it was so incredibly stressful every single month because you're trying to fuel your body properly, but you're kind of like, do I eat crap and save money, or eat really well and, have to do all this extra stuff on the side to make money? As a pro athlete, how is this the pinnacle of my sport and I'm struggling this bad? And so it was not glamorous. It was very difficult, but at the end of the day, we all just kind of said, we're pioneers for this sport. We're pioneers for young girls who want to play professional soccer. We're going to push the envelope for more, even if it's getting, apartments and they pay for housing, or pushing them to get us rental cars. And what I think so many girls were afraid of was, if I ask for too much, I'm going to lose my opportunity, because there are so many girls who want to play pro soccer here. And there are so many talented players. And ultimately, that was a huge part of why I didn't get re-signed by Sky Blue, because I was extremely vocal about the conditions and extremely vocal about, the girls on this team deserve so much more. And that was really difficult, but I felt extremely convicted to do so. And it was not popular. And I ended up in a very unprofessional way finding out that I was not getting my contract extended. And I was home in Oklahoma training and working at a gym for about making $600 a month, and just waiting, and didn't have a team. And that's when Orlando called me out of nowhere. I was literally sitting on the couch, working on my resume, trying to figure out how I could go back into broadcasting. And then I got a call from Orlando, and they said, we got to fly you out, if you will, because we need another goalkeeper to travel with us this weekend. We, went down with an injury. Our backup did. And I'm like, okay, well, I haven't trained. And they said, can we fly you to Seattle tomorrow? And I'm like, oh, homecoming. Great. Yeah, I'm down. I love Seattle. But, there was that pressure of, I'm going back to my old team. And, but there was no expectation of me to play. They had the national team goalkeeper as their starter, Ashlyn Harris. So I go out and, just having a ball, meeting the girls, and trying to just reconnect with people in Seattle. And 17 to 18 minutes into the game, Ashlyn Harris goes down with a season-ending hip injury.
Oh, geez.
and I'm like, I've been cleaning a gym, a 2-year pro, cleaning a gym the last 5 months, just staying in shape, wondering what God is doing with my life. And I end up on the field with Marta, who is the best player in the world, playing against Hope Solo and Megan Rapinoe, and all these players again. And we came away with a point on the road. And I remember that last couple months had been so trying because I didn't feel like God was calling me out of soccer yet.
Yeah.
And so I was so confused about, God, why am I cleaning a gym and teaching sixth graders how to run properly? And I feel like I have so much more to offer. And when I got back into the locker room after that game in Seattle, I just remember looking down at the uniform I had on and looking down at my cleats and my gloves on the ground. And I just started sobbing. And I got a couple looks from other teammates like, why is she crying? But a couple girls were like, we get it. And I'm like, I thought I was never going to play again. I thought I was done. I thought I had lost my opportunity. And it was just like this moment of worship back to God. Like, I trust you. Like, I know, I understand. And I'm not going to squander this season on being selfish and focusing on myself. I'm going to do whatever role you will call me to do. Because I always felt like I'm going to be a superstar. I'm going to go to the Olympics. I'm going to play in a World Cup. That's what I grind for every single day. I won't accept anything less than this. And I probably shouldn't have played pro. I wasn't extremely talented in college, but I worked my butt off and made huge strides and got to train with Hope Solo for a full year and watch everything she did, the good and the bad. And so that last year in Orlando, I read a book called Teammate, actually, by a player who played for the Cubs, David Ross. Yeah. And he talks about not being the most talented player and all of the same things I felt. And he talked about just greeting his teammates every day, shaking their hands, saying good morning every day, and saying hi to your support staff, the people who clean and shine your cleats and your athletic trainers who stretch you out on a moment's notice. I mean, just all those things, the people who are serving you food. And I said, you know what, this season is going to be a worship back to you because you gave me another opportunity to play. And I'm going to do whatever I can to serve everybody else. And if I'm not the best player on the team, and if I don't play a minute, I'm going to be okay with that for the first time in my life. And I really focused on that. And there were moments where I thought, man, this really stinks because I'm playing the best soccer I ever have. And Ashlyn is telling me, I don't get why you're not starting on another team. And, it's like that, thanks for the compliment. Yeah. Like, great. Yeah, exactly. But I'm not. Yeah. And my coaches are telling me, I mean, you're incredible. It's just, we've got somebody else who's equally as incredible, and she's been here longer. And she's been waiting for her moment. And I was genuinely happy for her. And that is tough, as competitive as I am, to be genuinely happy for the person in front of me. And we created an incredible relationship, and we trained and we pushed each other. And when we won, I felt like I had been on the field and won. Yeah. And the last game of the year, my contract was up and Ashlyn was coming back and I didn't get to suit up. And so I watched the game from the suite. And after the game, I went down and we played Sky Blue and we crushed them like 5-1. And first of all, I'm like, you're a good Christian. Don't you dare give that coach a dirty look. You walk right by him. You don't do that.
That's so funny.
Don't be petty. I'm like, just walk by him. So I'm like, okay, just breathe. I'm shaking because I just want to turn around and rip him apart. But I'm like, you're bigger than that. God has taken you way too far past that. And, kind of gave him a nod and hugged some of my old teammates. And then I turn around and everybody is like sprinting towards me and I'm looking behind me like, what's going on? And everybody just like piled into me, hugging me because they all knew like this was my last game. And I'm looking around and I just lost it because I realized in that moment, you've been a crappy teammate your whole life. You've been a leader because you're a natural leader, and you've been a leader and a captain because you've been so talented, but you have never served your teammates the way you did this year. And this is the best. I feel like I just won the national championship. And I got into the locker room and there was cards and flowers and, like it's a locker room. They iced me and, they're videoing me and laughing. And I was like, I've never felt this kind of joy. And I've never felt so appreciated. And I was like, God, I get it. You've been trying to teach me for so long that my performance does not equal my worth and my value to people. And I am okay with whatever you will do. And it was almost like it was the greatest way to go out. And so many people don't get that. And I didn't realize that until I felt called into retirement. But so many people don't get to have that amazing kind of Cinderella story ending. And as I went through winter and was training, I felt like something was off. I wasn't enjoying myself anymore. And I found myself kind of barking back at my private coaches when they were telling me something. You know, they're like, Caroline, you're not throwing your hips back. And I'm like, well, your service, it sucks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I've always been like, okay, I'll be better. And I had to sit down with my mentor, my goalkeeper coach back home, Dave Wiebengate, who's been like a father figure in my life, and pray and be like, what's going on? And I went up to the mountains with friends and prayed about it, and came down the mountain and had a call from all these college coaches. And I'm like, what's going on? So I decided to retire, and saying out loud, my friends were like, what? Because no one's ever known me outside of without soccer. And I'm like, God's making it really clear. And I'm crying happy tears. I'm not sad. I know it's going to be tough. I know there's going to be a mourning process, but and I don't want to retire. Don't get me wrong. I want to play a sport as a job. Are you kidding me? That's the most fun. And you're surrounded by your friends and you're just hanging out, go practice, hanging out. And of course I want to do that for as long as I can, but God is speaking to me and I can't ignore it. I've done that in the past. And so I announced my retirement and just received an outpouring of love and kind words and opportunities. And ultimately, you know, I announced it while I was working a youth event down in Florida for soccer and mentoring young girls. And all these college coaches kept coming up to me, giving me their business cards, like, we've been waiting for you to come into this coaching world. And I'm like sitting there going, I didn't say I was going to come coach college. Are you kidding me?
Right.
I'm like, I'm going to go back and work in sports. I'm going to go into sports broadcasting or sports advertisement and get back into, you know, being a social media director. And because I had been doing that on the side for some startup companies. And then Tulsa called, and it was so funny. They weren't calling upon me for my accolades. It was because they had heard what I had done with FCA and AIA and speaking at colleges and high school. And they wanted to talk to me about that.
So it had nothing to do with soccer. Like, I mean, it had obviously something to do, but it was more about the other things you were doing and being that better teammate.
Exactly. And he ironically had recruited me as a high schooler, but he had been called directly by somebody that was with FCA in California. Nothing from, hey, she can coach. It was like, hey, this is who she is in her faith life, which was insane.
That's awesome. What did you learn, I guess, Caroline? And we'll wind it down here in a couple more questions with Caroline Stanley on the podcast. Caroline, what did you learn from being that better teammate that last year? And I love that story because that's something I share a lot with people about redefining greatness and understanding that greatness isn't even about yourself. It's totally about serving others and just being sold out for other people and, of course, for God. What did you learn there that last year playing that you were able to take with you when you end up with the University of Tulsa and being a coach versus being a player and pouring that into the players that you were working with every day?
Yeah, I learned that to lead, you have to first serve. And you may be serving one person and it may be for one moment or 1 minute, but that it's so much more valuable to God and to this person to serve and lead them one instead of focusing on, you know, as the Bible says, the 99. And that was the biggest lesson I learned, was that people need to be told that they're loved. People need to be told whose they are, and people need to be told that they're cared for. And as a coach, I just kind of sat back and realized, like, people want to know that they're cared for. And if they feel like you truly love them, then they're going to listen to whatever you have to say soccer wise. And I realized that the soccer part, that's the easy part of being a coach. That's easy. It's second nature. But what I learned was that showing people that they are valuable without the sport and focusing on them as a young woman is going to take them so much further in life and on the field. And so that was the biggest lesson that I learned, that they just need somebody who's there to listen to them and there to remind them that they're already loved.
That's awesome. Now, I recently saw on Twitter that you posted a pretty cool picture of a guy named John Means making his Major League Baseball debut with the Baltimore Orioles in September. And it was at Fenway Park against the eventual world champion Boston Red Sox, of all places, at Fenway. So why don't you tell us who this John guy is?
Well, John Means, he is my boyfriend of almost 3 years, and he's incredible. I mean, we could do 3 more podcasts about the journey that we've had these last 3 years and the insane way that we were set up and just, I mean, all kinds of things. But he has been incredible these last 3 years in this transition from us both being professional athletes to now me being a coach. And I've watched him go through the farm system. I met him when he was in high A and watched him quickly get moved up to double A, watched him in double A really, really struggle in double A for a while. And, well, he had some extreme highs and lows there. He was pitcher of the organization a couple months in a row and had like a extremely low ERA, and then just hit this like slump. Yeah. And he's a lefty starting pitcher. So what I learned so quickly was that if you have a bad performance, it's like 5 agonizing days until you can redeem yourself. Yeah. And John has been so incredibly faithful to what God is speaking into his life and teaching him and trusting that baseball was still the path that God had destined for him. Because, you know, John's from Kansas. He went to Fort Scott Community College, 2 years at West Virginia, was drafted in the 11th round. And he is, he's so humble that it's annoying to me sometimes. Like we met somebody the other day and they're like, "Who are you with?" And he's like, the Orioles organization. And I'm like, he's with the big league club. Like, come on, man. Like, just say it. And he's like, "Caroline, stop." But, so what was so insane about this year, I went and visited him in double A. And the morning I got back from my flight, I took a nap and I woke up and I said, "Did you get called up?" And he's like, "No." "Why?" I said, "I had a dream. I can't really decipher what the dream was, but it's coming." And he's like, "I've been sucking lately. It's not coming." The next morning, 7 a.m., he goes, "How did you know?"
Wow.
And he got called up to AAA. And I mean, I had full body chills. I'm crying. I'm like, this is incredible. You know, AAA. And he goes up to AAA and he just starts killing it and having the best season of his life. And he was home, you know, season ended and he came home and same thing. Like he was home in Kansas and I was praying and I said, "I had the weirdest dream that you got called up." And he's like, "Well, I had a dream that I won a dance contest and that didn't happen." And I'm like, "Okay, come on, dude."
That's funny.
And the next day they called him and they were like, "We need you to go down to Florida and get ready." And so I'm over here like, okay, God is using me to speak and tell you like, you're still going in the right direction. So let's listen. And he goes down to Florida and, you know, his season had been done for 2 weeks. And as a pitcher, you know, with 140 plus innings or whatever it was, ending cold turkey for 2 weeks and then trying to go throw again is you could damage your arm. Yep. But he was just trusting God. And so he goes down to Florida for a week and, he calls me, I'm in Target. We just lost a game here. I was in a not good mood. And he's like, "Hold on, I'm getting a call." And I'm like, "Okay." He calls me back and he goes, "Hey, I'm going to Boston." And I go, "What do you mean?"
Going to a Celtics game, maybe go to a Patriots game.
Boston? What's going on in Boston? And he's like, "No, like I'm meeting the team in Boston." And I just lost it in Target. I looked insane, sobbing. And I'm like, "Are you serious?" I mean, I was shocked. And I'm like, "When?" And he said, "In the morning." And I said, "It's our bye week. It's the only week of the whole year we don't have games."
Wow.
And so I got to go up and watch him make his major league debut in Fenway. And I can't even begin to explain the joy that it was to watch somebody that you love so dearly have their childhood dream come true. I mean, the percentage of people that make it to the big leagues, you're like more likely to get attacked by a shark. It's insane. And, walking out onto Fenway myself and seeing the childlike joy and grin on his face, I was so proud of him. And it's been the most amazing thing to watch and see that dream just get reignited, and he's feeling better than ever and excited to go into spring training. So he's a pretty special guy.
All right, everybody, listen up. John Means, now your favorite baseball player with the Baltimore Orioles next year, 2019. Listen up.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Caroline, this has been great talking to you. Let's finish it up with this. And if you listen to any of our episodes in the podcast, you know this is coming. This is the last question we ask to every guest. So in this season of life, and it's a weird one for you, I guess, in a lot of good ways, of course, but what are you learning from God? What is he teaching you now that maybe even a year ago or 2 years ago, you didn't have that in your life? What is he teaching you right now?
Yeah. What I would say is, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but he's really teaching me that, be love and be kind. And if you just start by loving yourself and understanding that you're loved, that love is just going to completely overflow into the people in your life, and to just keep filling yourself up, because you may not realize who you're affecting and impacting, but God has big God-sized dreams and plans for your life. And you never know, just a simple act of kindness, and speaking lovingly to people, how that's going to impact them, because he really, really finds glory in that. And like I said earlier, it's all about the one, leave the 99. He's going to do his work. But if there's somebody in place in your life that you can just love on and show them that they're accepted and they're not judged, then that's what drives people to Christ. That love, it's not the judgment. It's not the conviction. It's truly just the full, I love you no matter what you've done, who you were, who you are now, and how many times you're going to mess up, but I see you for who you're becoming and what God wants you to be. And so that's just been the biggest thing that he's been teaching me lately, is to just become that love that he wants me to show.
That's awesome. She is Caroline Stanley, University of Tulsa goalkeeper, soccer coach, former pro soccer player, and maybe future wife someday. We'll see, to Mr. John Means in the Baltimore Orioles. We'll all be praying for that. How about that, Caroline?
Yeah, exactly. Put the pressure on him.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Well, listen, it's been great to talk to you. Your story's awesome, and you do have a future in broadcasting if you ever want to go that route. That's the truth. But it's been great to talk to you, and I wish you nothing but the best, and we'll hopefully have you back on again sometime soon.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for this platform that you've created. I know so many of our own girls have been watching just the Instagram post and listening to the podcast. So thanks for starting such an amazing conversation.
And we do thank Caroline Stanley for joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. You can keep up with Caroline on Twitter and Instagram at Caroline Stan, S-T-A-N, at Caroline Stan, the University of Tulsa goalkeeper, soccer coach, and just a really cool story. I mean, she's got an awesome journey and an awesome story to tell, and she's making a difference for Christ in the way that she's loving others, in the way that she's serving others, in the way that she's living out her life for Jesus. So great story there, and I really just enjoyed having Caroline here on the podcast. So make sure you follow her on Instagram and on Twitter. We thank Caroline. We also thank you for listening, and we thank our partners, Compassion International. For $38 a month, release a child from poverty, food, education, medical care, all done in the name of Jesus. This is your chance to partner with us and to make a difference in a child's life by working through Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. Here's the website, compassion.com/sportspectrum, compassion.com/sportspectrum. It's the holiday season. You want to make a difference. You're not sure where to go. Try Compassion. I promise you it'll be the best $38 you spend every single month, and you get to make a difference in a child's life. That's what it's all about. Compassion.com/sportspectrum. Sponsor a child today. Thanks to Caroline Stanley for joining us. Thanks to you for listening. As always, you can reach us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at sports_spectrum. And you can email me directly, Jason@sportspectrum.com. You can also leave a review of this podcast on iTunes, Apple Podcast, and of course we're on Google Play and Stitcher and Spotify. Everywhere podcasts are found, you can download and subscribe to the Sports Spectrum podcast. We also want to encourage you to subscribe to our Sports Spectrum magazine. It's $18 for an entire year. It's an amazing deal. $18 for an entire year, less than $2 a month, and you get the Sports Spectrum magazine. And it's an incredible magazine. It really is. It's about 70, 80 pages, and it tells the stories of sports and faith in depth, even deeper in some ways than we can tell here on the podcast, and just beautifully designed. Well, a great job by our guys, Aaron and John, who work on the magazine, and just can't encourage you enough. That's another great idea for a gift. $18 for a whole year, and you get the Sports Spectrum magazine. Get it for your child, get it for your grandchild, get it for a youth group, maybe a church setting or a sports team, a men's ministry, whatever it is. I can't encourage you enough to get the Sports Spectrum magazine. The website for that is sportspectrum.com. Very simple. Just go to sportspectrum.com and subscribe today. Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast, and we'll see you next time with a brand new episode here on Sports Spectrum. Have a great rest of your day.